The massive viewing screen in the Galactic Council's main chamber displayed a small blue planet, spinning slowly against the backdrop of endless stars. Around the circular table, 12 alien representatives from the most advanced civilizations in the known galaxy watched with mild interest. High Commander Ross of the Ascendants, tall and silver-skinned, stood up from his ornate chair. "This, honored members, is our latest discovery in Sector 7, a planet called Earth by its inhabitants." He waved his hand, and the image zoomed in to show cities, roads, and various human structures. "Primitive," muttered Representative Blake, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "They still rely on combustion engines and fossil fuels." The other council members nodded in agreement. Their civilizations had moved past such basic technology thousands of years ago. They watched as images of cars, planes, and early space rockets flashed across the screen. "Our long-range scans indicate they managed to reach their moon," Ross continued, "but never established any permanent colonies. They achieved basic spaceflight, but seemed to have stopped there." He paused, checking his data tablet. "Most interesting is that we detect no current human activity on the planet. It appears to have been abandoned for at least 3 centuries." This caught everyone's attention. Representative Smith leaned forward, her crystalline form catching the light. "Abandoned? Did they destroy themselves?" "That was our initial assumption," Ross replied. "However, we find no evidence of warfare or natural disaster. They simply vanished." He displayed more images, empty cities slowly being reclaimed by nature, defunct satellites orbiting Earth, and abandoned space stations. "Fascinating," Smith said. "A failed civilization that couldn't handle its own development. We should study them, learn from their mistakes." The council members murmured in agreement. Failed civilizations were not uncommon in the galaxy. Many species destroyed themselves before achieving true spacefaring capability. Earth would make an excellent case study for their xenoanthropologists. "I propose we send an exploration fleet," Ross said. "We can document their remains and add their story to the Great Archive as another example of a species that couldn't survive its own technological adolescence." Representative Blake laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "Perhaps we should add a warning note. This is what happens when you waste time with primitive rocket technology instead of developing proper space drives." The chamber filled with various sounds of alien amusement. Their own civilizations had long since mastered gravity manipulation, dimensional folding, and clean energy. Looking at humanity's primitive attempts at space travel seemed like watching children playing with toys. "Very well," Ross declared. "I will lead the exploration fleet myself. We'll document their civilization and collect samples for study. The younger races in our empire can learn from their failures." The council voted unanimously to approve the mission. As the members filed out of the chamber, they already began discussing how to divide up the study of Earth's remains. Some were interested in the primitive technology, others in the planet's resources, and a few in the biological samples they might find. None of them noticed the small smile on the face of Representative Lee, the oldest member of the council. She sat quietly, watching the Earth rotate on the screen, her ancient eyes twinkling with something that might have been amusement. As Ross passed her chair, she spoke softly. "High Commander, a word of advice." He stopped, turning to the respected elder. "Of course, Representative. Be careful with your assumptions about Earth," she said. "Sometimes the simplest puzzles hide the most complex solutions." Ross nodded politely but dismissed her warning. After all, what could be complex about a primitive civilization that hadn't even developed basic antimatter technology? They still used chemical rockets for galaxy's sake. As he left the chamber, Ross was already planning how to distribute the research tasks among his fleet. This would be a simple mission: observe, document, and archive. Nothing more than a footnote in the great history of spacefaring civilizations. He had no idea how wrong he was. High Commander Ross stood on the bridge of his flagship, Stellar Seeker, watching as his fleet of 5 ships entered the Sol system. The vessels, each shaped like perfect silver spheres, moved silently through space using their advanced gravity drives. "Status report," he ordered, his silver skin reflecting the light from nearby Mars. "All ships reporting normal, Commander," Officer Wilson replied from his station. "We're picking up thousands of small objects in orbit around Earth, defunct satellites, and space debris, just as our initial scans showed." Ross nodded, pleased with how routine the mission was going. His fleet had brought the finest scientists and researchers from across the Galactic Council. They would study this failed civilization, document its collapse, and add another chapter to their records of primitive species that didn't make it to the stars. "Sir," Officer Wilson's voice suddenly rose in pitch, "we're detecting an unusual energy signature near Mars." Ross turned sharply. "What kind of signature?" It's massive, sir. Like nothing I've ever seen before. The reading is coming from behind Mars' largest moon, Phobos." "Take us there," Ross ordered. "All ships, maintain formation." As the fleet moved past Mars, their sensors began picking up more anomalous readings. The energy signature grew stronger, and their instruments started showing strange gravitational distortions. Then they saw it. "By the eternal stars," Ross whispered. Floating in the shadow of Phobos was a ship, but not just any ship. It was enormous, at least 10 times the size of Ross's flagship. Its design was unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. The hull was dark and smooth, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Various sections of the vessel pulsed with a deep blue energy that seemed to bend space around it. "Scan it immediately," Ross ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. The results made no sense. The ship's hull was made of materials their sensors couldn't identify. The energy readings suggested power systems far beyond their understanding. And most surprisingly, it bore clear markings in human script. "Sir," Wilson said, his voice shaking, "the ship appears to be Earth-made." "Impossible," Ross declared. "The humans never developed anything beyond chemical rockets. This must be from another civilization." "No, sir. Look at this." Wilson projected an image onto the main screen. There, clearly visible on the ship's hull, was an inscription. "Horizon. United Earth Space Command. Ad Astra per Aspera." "But this can't be," Ross stammered. "Our intelligence showed they were primitive. They never achieved this level of technology." More scans revealed the ship was powered down but intact. It showed no signs of damage or combat. It appeared to have been deliberately parked in Mars orbit, like a car left in a parking lot. "Sir," Wilson reported, "we're finding more energy signatures. There are similar ships hidden throughout the solar system. They're all powered down, all apparently abandoned." Ross sank into his command chair, his mind racing. Everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. This single ship displayed technology centuries ahead of the Galactic Council's best achievements. The gravitational distortions alone suggested mastery of physics that Council scientists had only theorized about. "Prepare a boarding party," Ross ordered finally. "Full environmental suits and all scanning equipment. I want to know what's inside that ship." As his crew prepared for the expedition, Ross sent an urgent message to the Council. The simple mission to study a failed civilization had just become something far more significant. The boarding shuttle approached the massive human vessel, looking tiny against its vast hull. Ross, leading the mission himself, felt a growing sense of unease. They had mocked humanity as primitive, but this ship suggested otherwise. What other surprises would they find inside? And more importantly, why had humanity left such advanced vessels behind? As they approached the airlock, Ross couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't discovering humanity's remains. They were following a trail of breadcrumbs deliberately left behind. Ross and his team of 6 scientists stood in the massive entrance hall of the Horizon, their environmental suits reflecting in the dark metal walls. The ship's emergency lighting had activated when they entered, casting everything in a soft blue glow. "Artificial gravity is active," announced Dr. Miller, checking her instruments. "But this is strange. There's no gravity generator anywhere on my scans." Ross felt it too. The gravity was perfect, exactly like their homeworlds. But every spacefaring race needed massive generators to create artificial gravity. Without them, it was impossible. "Over here," called Dr. Thompson, his tentacles waving in excitement. "I found a control panel." The panel lit up as they approached, displaying crisp holographic symbols in human writing. Despite their advanced translation technology, many symbols made no sense. They referenced concepts the aliens had never encountered. "The engineering is impossible," Miller said, studying the panel. "Look at these power readings. The ship isn't just powered down. It's running on minimal backup power, and even that is stronger than our fleet's combined output." Ross touched the wall, feeling a slight vibration. "Where's the engine room?" They followed the ship's helpful guide lights through massive corridors. Everything was built on a scale that seemed unnecessarily large. They passed rooms filled with strange equipment, laboratories with unknown devices, and what appeared to be living quarters that could house thousands. The engine room, when they finally reached it, left them speechless. "This can't be right," whispered Dr. Thompson, staring at his scanner. "According to these readings, this isn't an engine at all. It's like a hole in space itself." In the center of the vast chamber floated what looked like a sphere of pure darkness, surrounded by rotating rings of some bright, unknown metal. No cables connected it to the ship. It simply hung there, defying their understanding of physics. "Their fuel source," Miller said, checking another panel. They were using stars. Somehow, they were using entire stars as fuel sources without destroying them." Ross felt a headache coming on. Everything they were seeing contradicted what they knew about humanity. A race that had barely reached its moon couldn't possibly have mastered star energy and space itself. "Commander," called Wilson over the radio, "we found their computer core. You need to see this." The computer room was different. Unlike the massive engine room, it was small and simple. A single terminal sat on a desk, looking almost primitive compared to the rest of the ship. "We can't access it," Wilson reported. "Their security systems are beyond anything we've ever seen. It's not just encrypted. It's like the data itself doesn't want to be read." Ross approached the terminal. As he did, it suddenly came to life, displaying a simple message. "Welcome, explorers. When you are ready to learn, you will be able to read this. Not before." "What does that mean?" Thompson asked, his tentacles curling in confusion. Before anyone could answer, Miller called out from another room. "Commander, we found some kind of laboratory. There's something you need to see." The laboratory was filled with tables holding what looked like everyday human objects. Phones, computers, cars, even an old rocket. But each item had been partially disassembled, with notes and diagrams floating above them in holographic displays. "These are fakes," Miller said, examining them. "The humans, they deliberately created primitive technology. They wanted to appear less advanced than they were." Ross stared at the evidence before him. The humans hadn't failed or died out. They had hidden their true capabilities, presenting a false image to any watching eyes. "But why?" Wilson asked. "Why pretend to be primitive?" Ross looked around the massive ship, at the technology they couldn't understand and the mysteries that seemed to multiply with each discovery. For the first time in his long career, he felt truly humbled. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we should be asking what they found out there that made them so careful about who knew their true capabilities." The blue emergency lights pulsed softly, as if in agreement, while the greatest mystery in Council history continued to unfold around them. After 3 days of exploration, Ross's team finally discovered the ship's main archive room. Unlike the stark, metallic corridors of the rest of the vessel, this chamber was warm and inviting, with walls that seemed to be made of actual wood. "It's like walking into an old library," Dr. Miller said, running her hand along one of the shelves. Instead of books, the walls were lined with softly glowing data crystals. each one pulsing with a gentle inner light. "They wanted us to find this," Ross said, noting how the room's design seemed perfectly suited for various alien species. The chairs could adjust to any body type, and the interfaces were simple enough for any civilization to understand. Dr. Thompson floated one of the crystals to a nearby reader. "This one's different from the encrypted systems we found earlier. It's letting me access it." The room's center suddenly filled with a three-dimensional hologram of the Milky Way galaxy, but it was unlike any map they had ever seen. Points of light marked what appeared to be human outposts and colonies, spreading far beyond what should have been possible. "According to this," Thompson said, his tentacles trembling with excitement, "humans achieved faster than light travel over 500 years ago. They had settlements in thousands of star systems." Ross watched as more data flowed across the holographic display. "But that's impossible. Our ships have visited many of these systems. We never found any sign of human presence." "Look at this," Miller called from another console. "I found their travel logs. They didn't just build colonies, they built hidden ones. Every outpost was concealed using something called dimensional shifting technology." The next crystal revealed something even more astounding. It showed humans working alongside species that the Council had never encountered, sharing knowledge and building things together. These species weren't just advanced, they were beyond anything the Council had imagined possible. "Here's the first mention of the Great Journey," Wilson reported, scanning through another data stream. "It seems to be what the humans were preparing for when they left Earth." Ross moved to Wilson's console, reading the flowing text. The humans wrote about discovering something profound during their secret explorations. They called it the thread of creation, something that connected all living things across not just space, but dimensions. "According to this," Wilson continued, "humans spent centuries quietly studying other civilizations. They were looking for species that were ready to learn the truth about something big." A new crystal revealed more details about human technological development. They hadn't just been hiding their advancement. They had been deliberately leaving clues and tests for other species to find. "Commander," Miller said softly, "look at these dates. Humans didn't just reach our level of technology. They passed it thousands of years ago. Everything we thought was advanced. Our gravity drives, our energy systems, our fastest ships. Humans had better versions before they even left Earth." Ross sank into one of the adjustable chairs, his silver skin slightly pale. "We've been so blind," he whispered, "so arrogant. All this time, we thought we were the most advanced species in the galaxy." "There's more," Thompson added, accessing another crystal. "Earth wasn't abandoned. It was preserved. The humans left it as a kind of living museum, a reminder of where they started. All that primitive technology we detected, it was maintained deliberately, like keeping your childhood home exactly as it was." The room's holographic display shifted, showing Earth as it once was, bustling with human activity. Then it showed the gradual transformation as humans prepared for something bigger than planetary civilization. "They left us a message," Wilson said, holding up a final crystal that glowed brighter than the others. "It says, 'To those who find this archive, congratulations. You've taken the first step. Finding this room means you're ready to learn who we really were and perhaps who you might become.'" Ross stared at the crystal, understanding dawning in his eyes. This wasn't just a discovery of an advanced civilization. This was an invitation. But to what? The answer, he suspected, lay in the countless other crystals surrounding them, each pulsing with the knowledge of a species that had long since moved beyond the simple boundaries of space and time. The discovery of the archives triggered a flurry of activity across the solar system. Ross had called in additional research vessels, and teams were now finding similar ships hidden near every planet. Each one contained different pieces of advanced human technology. "Commander," Wilson called from his station aboard the Stellar Seeker, "you need to see the reports from the ship we found near Jupiter." Ross, who hadn't slept in days, moved to look at Wilson's screen. The images showed another massive vessel, this one seemingly dedicated to something called consciousness transfer technology. The Venus team just reported in too, Dr. Miller added, her eyes glowing with excitement. They found a ship that appears to be some sort of dimensional research facility. The technology there, it makes our most advanced quantum physics look like child's play. Ross rubbed his tired eyes. In just 1 week, everything they believed about humanity had been turned upside down. Each discovery led to more questions, and each answer revealed deeper mysteries. "Play that recording we found again," Ross ordered, the one from their chief scientist. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a human figure speaking calmly. "To our future friends among the stars, if you're watching this, you've begun to understand. Humanity didn't die out or destroy itself. We evolved. We discovered something that changed everything we thought we knew about reality. Space isn't just 3 dimensions. Time isn't a straight line. And consciousness is the key to everything." The human's image smiled knowingly before continuing. "We spent centuries preparing for what we called the Great Journey. We built these ships as guideposts, leaving behind breadcrumbs of knowledge for those who were ready to follow. Each vessel contains a piece of the puzzle, a step on the path we took." Dr. Thompson floated into the room, his tentacles carrying several data pads. "Commander, we've decoded more files. The humans, they found a way to step outside our universe entirely. They discovered that reality is like a vast ocean, and our universe is just one drop in it. But why leave all this behind?" Wilson asked. "Why not just take everything with them?" Ross stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the massive horizon still floating serenely in space. "Because they were teachers," he said slowly. "Think about it. Every ship is designed to be found and understood by other species. Every piece of technology is laid out like a lesson plan." Miller nodded. "The archive mentioned something about this. Humans believed that all intelligent species would eventually reach this point of understanding. They left these ships as textbooks, guides for those who came after them." "Commander," a young officer burst into the room, "we found something in Mercury's orbit. It's bigger than anything we've seen yet." The screens filled with images of an enormous structure, easily dwarfing all other human vessels they'd discovered. But unlike the other ships, this one was active, its hull pulsing with strange energies. "According to these readings," Thompson said, studying the data, "it's some kind of gateway. The energy patterns suggest it's connected to somewhere else, somewhere outside our normal space-time." Ross stared at the massive structure, understanding finally dawning. "It's not just a gateway," he said quietly. "It's an invitation. The humans left us their technology, their knowledge, their understanding of reality itself. And then they left us a door." Should we tell the Council?" Wilson asked. Ross thought about the Council's arrogance, their dismissal of humanity as primitive. He thought about how wrong they had all been, and about the vast journey of discovery that now lay before them. "Yes," he said finally. "But first, we need to understand exactly what humanity was trying to tell us. They didn't just leave us their technology. They left us a choice. A choice about whether we're ready to see what they saw, to know what they knew." The enormous gateway continued its silent rotation around Mercury, waiting patiently for those who were ready to understand its purpose, just as humanity had planned all along. After 3 weeks of studying the human vessels, Ross's team made their most significant discovery. Deep within the horizon's central computer core, they found a locked message. Unlike the other data they'd discovered, this one was sealed with security measures far beyond anything they'd seen before. "It's not just encrypted," Dr. Miller explained, her fingers dancing over the holographic controls. "It's waiting for something, like it needs us to prove we're ready to read it." Ross stood in the dimly lit computer core, surrounded by his best scientists. They had tried everything to access the message, but nothing worked. The computer simply responded with the same phrase each time: "Understanding comes before knowledge." "What if," Thompson said slowly, his tentacles twisting thoughtfully, What if we're thinking about this wrong? The humans left everything else as teaching tools. Maybe this is another test. Wilson nodded, moving to another console. Look at all the other systems we've accessed. Each one required us to understand the principle behind it before it would work. The gravity system wouldn't activate until we figured out how it functioned. Ross's eyes widened. They don't want us to break the encryption. They want us to understand it. For the next 3 days, the team studied everything they knew about human technology, especially their theories about consciousness and reality. They found patterns in the ship's design, in the way systems connected, in the very mathematics that governed human technology. Finally, on the 4th day, Miller called everyone to the computer core. "I think I understand now," she said quietly. The humans didn't just discover new technology. They found a new way of thinking. Their machines don't just process data. They work with consciousness itself. She placed her hand on the console, closed her eyes, and simply thought about understanding. The screen lit up with a soft blue glow, and the message began to play. A human figure appeared, but it was unlike any they had seen in the archives. It seemed to be made of light itself, shifting and flowing like water. "Greetings," it said, its voice resonating in their minds rather than their ears. "If you're seeing this message, you've taken the first step toward true understanding. You've learned to think beyond the boundaries of conventional physics." The figure gestured, and the room filled with incredible images, glimpses of realities beyond their comprehension, dimensions that shouldn't exist, and ways of being they had never imagined. Humanity discovered that consciousness isn't just an emergent property of complex brains. It's the fundamental force of reality itself. Everything. Matter, energy, space, time. They're all expressions of consciousness. We learn to work with this force directly, to shape reality itself. The being's form shifted again, becoming more complex, more beautiful. We left these ships behind as stepping stones. Each vessel contains a piece of the puzzle, teaching the principles needed to follow our path. But we couldn't just give away this knowledge. Each species must grow into understanding, must prove ready for the power it brings. Ross watched, transfixed, as the figure explained humanity's great discovery, how they had learned to transcend physical form, to explore realities beyond the conventional universe, to become something greater than their original selves. "The gateway near Mercury is your invitation," the being continued. "But it will only open for those who truly understand what they're seeing. The choice to follow is yours. Be warned. This path will change everything you think you know about reality." The message ended with a set of coordinates, locations of other human vessels hidden throughout the galaxy, each containing another piece of the puzzle. "Commander," Wilson whispered, breaking the long silence that followed. "What do we do now?" Ross looked at his team, seeing the wonder and fear in their eyes. They had come looking for remnants of a primitive civilization. Instead, they had found an invitation to transcend everything they thought they knew. "We learn," he said finally. "We study. We understand. And then," he looked at the coordinates floating in the air, "then we decide if we're ready to follow humanity's path." The computer core hummed softly, waiting patiently for their next step on the journey that humanity had prepared for them so long ago. The great hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Ross stood before the assembled representatives, his report on the human vessels complete. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Representative Blake, who had once laughed at humanity's primitive rockets, sat frozen in his chair. Representative Smith's crystalline form had lost some of its usual sparkle. Only Representative Lee, the ancient member who had warned Ross to be careful with his assumptions, showed any sign of pleasant emotion. "Let me understand this clearly," the council leader said, breaking the silence. "Not only were humans far more advanced than we thought, but they also discovered something so profound that they evolved beyond physical form itself." "Yes," Ross replied simply, "and they left behind a path for others to follow." The chamber erupted in voices. Some called for immediate study of all human vessels. Others demanded they be destroyed. fearing knowledge too powerful to control. A few simply sat in shocked silence. Order. The council leader's voice boomed across the chamber. Commander Ross, what do your scientists recommend? Ross activated a hologram showing the various human ships they had discovered. The humans were very clear. This knowledge can't be rushed or forced. Each vessel contains lessons that must be understood, not just learned. It's a journey of understanding, not just technology. Representative Smith leaned forward. But their technological achievements alone, the gravity control, the energy systems, the dimensional physics, surely we can at least study those. We already are, Ross replied. But there's something else you need to know. He paused, knowing his next words would change everything. Earth wasn't abandoned. It's being preserved, protected. The humans left it as a garden. A garden? Several voices asked at once. Yes, they maintain Earth's appearance of primitive development deliberately. It's meant to be a starting point, a place where young civilizations can find their first clues about humanity's path. We're not the first to find these ships, and we won't be the last. The council chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. Their mighty civilization, which had thought itself at the peak of development, was just another student finding humanity's carefully placed breadcrumbs. There's more, Ross continued. We've detected similar vessels near other developing worlds. Earth isn't the only garden. The humans are watching over multiple young civilizations, waiting for them to be ready for the knowledge they left behind. Representative Lee finally spoke, her ancient voice carrying easily across the chamber. So the question before us is not what we will do with this knowledge, but whether we are ready for it at all. Ross nodded. The humans believe that consciousness itself is the key to understanding reality. Their technology, their achievements, even their evolution, it all came from this understanding. We have to decide if we're ready to change everything we think we know about the universe. The council leader stood, his decision made. We will form a new division dedicated to studying the human legacy. But we will do it carefully, respectfully, following their guidance. No shortcuts, no rushing ahead. We learn as they intended us to learn. And Earth? Someone asked. We maintain the secret, the leader declared. Other civilizations deserve the same journey of discovery we had, the same chance to grow into understanding. As the council meeting ended, Ross found himself back at the original viewing screen where they had first seen Earth. The simple blue planet spun peacefully, its primitive satellites still orbiting, its cities still appearing abandoned. But now he knew better. Earth wasn't a remnant of a failed civilization. It was a seedbed, carefully maintained by beings who had evolved beyond anything his people could imagine. And they had left behind not just their technology, but a challenge. Were other species ready to follow their path? Representative Lee joined him at the window. You know, she said softly, some of us suspected something like this. The universe is too vast, too complex for any species to truly be alone in advancement. Ross nodded, watching Earth's slow rotation. They had come looking for a primitive civilization's remains. Instead, they had found humanity's greatest gift, an invitation to become something more than they were. The journey ahead would be long, but for the first time, Ross truly understood. This was just the beginning.